Today we're going to pick up with talking about socialization by institutions. And there are two types of institutions. I'm not that anxious for you guys to define institutions as a general concept. It's really hard to do, and most of the widely accepted definitions in sociology and political science are just kind of weird. I do want you to understand the different types and which institutions go in which category. In terms of our formal institutions that we're going to consider, we're going to look at schools, and we'll start with schools because that's kind of the most natural place to start since we're in a school. The government, jobs, and religion. All of those are formal institutions because they have things like rules and hierarchies. And a lot of them come with buildings and other very real kinds of things. Informal institutions are going to include things like the mass media, which includes television, whether it's your streaming service, cable, satellite, or if you've got an antenna on top of your roof. Not knocking you if you've got an antenna on top of your roof. That's how I get my TV. And also, and I know that's a little hard to see, social media, which has become an increasingly important informal socialization agent. And as I said, we're going to start with formal institutions, and we're going to start with schools. And here we have to return to a bit of functionalism. Robert Merton, manifest functions are maybe the most obvious thing about what a school does. We teach you subjects. I teach math, I teach you sociology. We learn things, and we learn how to do stuff related to two specific topics. But for socialization, what is much more important is the latent functions of school, and kind of the byproduct of what we do to try to teach you content. We try to teach you pro-social behaviors, like the 4 C's. Communication. Now, in a class like ELA, that may be very much a manifest function. They're teaching you how to write, to communicate ideas and arguments. If you're in speech and debate, it's also very much about communication. Yes? No, you're fine. So, okay, so I really thought I had flushed all of those out. All right. So let's see, formal institutions. Okay. So the manifest is teaching content. And then we should be okay for the next couple of blanks, and then I'll jump back here. Yeah, no, thank you guys for calling me out on that. That is intended to be clear. So, communication. Here, it's definitely more of a latent function. Our discussion assignments are very much about communication, but that's not the primary thing. Collaboration. We don't do group assignments in here, but your discussions are also collaborations. You rely on the participation of your classmates in order to be able to do your work and do it well. Now, one of the things that's not part of the 4 C's is following routines. I know that sounds like the soul-crushing part of the school day, but routines are part of life. They're something you're going to use in your jobs, and we have all kinds of routines. You go from one class to the next. You always know what your next class is because of your schedule. You know when you go there. You know when you leave there. You know when you eat lunch. Within this class, you know that we always have a do now and an exit slip. I say always, almost always. And those routines are powerful enough that on those rare occasions where we haven't had a do now or an exit slip, students point out before I can even tell them, I don't see an exit slip. Do we have a do now today? Routines have an important effect. I'm not saying my routine is awesome or that you should love it, but they do have influence on socialization. Working with bureaucracy is also another part of this. Whether it's, making sure you've got all your credits for graduation, that you've got your community service documented for graduation. Maybe if you've transferred here from a different state or a different country, you've got to deal with the nurse to make sure you've got the right vaccinations and can continue attending school. And I know that's kind of blanked out there. That's patriotism and civic-mindedness. I will be, yes. So, patriotism here. Oh, that's not patriotism. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and we'll back up to talk about this, but competitiveness. That's going to be also hard for us to see.
No.
Now, in terms of patriotism and civic-mindedness, some of that is patriotism every day. The Pledge of Allegiance is recited, whether or not you participated in it or not. Government class, a lot of that is about teaching you that America is exceptional and wonderful, and that you should be proud to be an American or proud to be living in this country. Civic-mindedness, same thing. Government classes, you're taught that voting is this important and noble duty that you should participate in. Civic-mindedness also reinforced by that community service requirement. You've got to do something for your community, your city, in order to graduate. And then, of course, finally, as I said, competitiveness. Not just about making the varsity team in your sport or making first chair clarinet in the orchestra, but also things like class rank, or whether you're going to graduate cum laude or summa cum laude. I don't really know what it means here yet. I've not figured it out. It's a Nope, they do that here too. Well, here it means something different. In college, it's based on grade point averages, but here it's a kind of composite of other things. All right, next up, socialization by government. So government reinforces our society's norms and beliefs through laws. We have mores, which remember, mores are those very serious norms against murder. We have laws against murder. In terms of values, well, to at least some extent, our society values equity. And so the law says that people who make more money will pay a larger percentage of what they make in taxes. And we have a belief in majority rule, and so we have a system that in a lot of ways favors the majority. Yes, Marshall.
Oh, I have a question.
Okay. And it's not just that. In a lot of ways, government tells us the key kind of mile markers in our lives. And right now, you are in the midst of a bunch of them. In terms of what your different ages mean, well, 16, you can get a driver's license. 18, you're allowed to vote. If you're a male, you have to register for the draft in case there's a major war.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wait, if you have to register for it, why would they make you register in the first place? What?
Because you have, I mean, it's the same thing as if you get summoned to jury duty, you have to show up.
Well, no, I meant like, not like you,
You can go to the post office and they can pick that up.
Register just means like sign up. So why would you have to sign up for being called on the draft?
Well, so that they know where to find you. And so, I mean, and also because it's not always necessarily clear to the authorities who is a male and who is not. My mother-in-law has an unusual name and got a draft notice during the Vietnam War because they weren't sure, and they're just like, well, let's just throw that at the wall and see if it sticks. She let them know, I am a female and not required to go fight in Vietnam, so I will not be doing that. Thank you very much. But that's why you have to register. Yes, Jen.
Why are men at least forced to be more like it's all or nothing?
Well, it's just, I mean, that's the history of it. It's not that way in every country anymore. If you're in Israel, everybody is conscripted.
I know it's not in every country,
Yeah.
I just don't get why America is so dead set.
Well, it's not. And chances are, if there's another draft, the draft will apply and be expanded to include everybody.
It's just currently there seems to be no need for the draft.
Right, yeah.
Hopefully we never have to use
Yeah.
it again.
Since there's no need, nobody's revising it. If there is a need, it will be revised.
And also hopefully it never happens again, and they'll be hesitant to because of Vietnam.
Yes, that would be not. I would prefer not to see America forced to conscript people. Right. 21 is now the mile marker for access to all kinds of restricted drugs, tobacco, alcohol. In this state more recently, marijuana, but again, not till you're 21. And then it skips quite a few. And then when you hit 65, I mean, you can be a little earlier than this, but at 65, you fully qualify for federal retirement benefits like Social Security. Government also provides you with your identity as citizens or residents of different nation states or countries. And we can see that in images like this one. I mean, Americans and the British share a lot of things in common. Right? And yet, because we are two different countries with two different governments, we have distinct identities. American Uncle Sam, British John Bull. And so that's what happens, right? Like Jalen, you said you went to New York. Right? And if somebody asked you where you were from, you probably told them, well, I'm from Missouri, or maybe you said Missouri. Right? If you had instead traveled to London and somebody asked, where are you from? Rather than saying the state, you probably would have said, well, I'm an American. Right? Because that's government structures our identities. But they also structure our identities within the country through things like ethnic group categories. Right? Lots of government documents require you to select from one of very few options about your ethnic identity. Yes, Jim.
When it comes to being trans, how do they identify you?
Well, I mean, for ethnic group, doesn't matter. For other things, right now, I mean, a lot of documents, it's sex, not gender. And so it's just male or female. And that's how they do that.
It's a little message.
Well, and it may change.
Yeah, I feel like there should be an actual document of some sort saying, hey, I was born as this, I am this.
Well, and that is something we will talk, because gender is short and on our short list of things to cover before the end of this semester. Now, this type of ethnic group division can cause a lot of problems. In terms of how ethnic groups are recognized, there can be preference, as there was in the United States, very much. I mean, there's not now, but in terms of legal preference during the Jim Crow era, those identities definitely gave preferential treatment to whites over everybody else. And then finally, I know this will be hard for you to see, but persecution. And I will go to Cami to make sure we can all see that. But what we can see for that here is this. This is an ethnic identity card from Rwanda. Rwanda they kind of had two groups that were a little different. The Europeans came in and categorized these groups in ways that made them seem more different. They gave preferential treatment to one group over the other. And then after the Europeans left, that led to persecution and conflict, and ultimately the killing of hundreds of thousands of people in the mid-90s. Yeah. Sorry, Brycey. Yep, that is exactly it, and that's where that identity card was from. Let's see. So, persecution was that last one.
That's not right.
Okay, now don't worry about the exit slip for now. Just stick with me on the notes. I'll let you know during seminar kind of how we're going to treat the exit slip.